Welcome, everyone, to this episode of Freedom Hub's Working Group. I'm your host, Jeff Cantor, along with my co-host, Charles Frohman. We are sponsored by the Freedom Hub, which is the disruptor's intersection, and all the activists and entrepreneurs are trying to disrupt the world all in one single place, and we're trying to make that happen. We're going to take a look at that site in a second. What we also wanted to point out is we have another show that's kind of in the same vein, where we're talking about the idea of being a free cash patient and freeing the doctor's professions away from the cartels that control them. So you'll want to scope that out. All of it revolves around the one main website. Here's a short way to get there. And effectively, this is the marketplace for health, wealth, and freedom. And just to let you know, we wanted to tell you that there's a lot of stuff here to look at. Initially, you'll want to see the home tab. Today, we're going to the webinars. And then also here, you'll see continuing the conversation. That's kind of the important part. If you click on that, you end up over here. And here, just like for today's guest, you'll find that speaker and a way to connect with them, to learn more, to participate, to lobby with them, to contribute, whatever the topic or the issue was that was important to you while you want to check it and connect with that guest, you're going to want to do it. So then also, under the webinars, and that's kind of where we are today, let's take a quick tour of the page. Here's the breakout of who's speaking today. We're on the one at 4 o'clock at the moment. And then further down is who's coming up, so you can plan forward at some exciting topics coming. But most importantly, here's the various links. This video will be posted on all 4 of these channels by the end of the weekend. So if we click on one as an example, just to give you a flavor of the layout, you'll see that there's an awful lot. They go back a long time. Most of these topics, sadly, are still pretty cogent and current, problematic as they may be. So we need you to therefore connect with that person later on. So come back to this, continuing the conversation and really get going. So let's see what we've got going on for today and how we can get this conversation underway. Charles, if you step in here and do the honors.
Be glad to, Jeff, and welcome back, John. For anyone involved in liberty efforts, John is someone you should know at that fantastic Future of Freedom Daily that Bumper Hornberger hosts, or at LouRockwell.com and other sites. Periodically, you'll see an article from John, and they're dense, to be honest. I mean, they're full of all the ways in which the government assaults our liberties, which is good, and that it gives you a comprehensive picture how they're doing their dirty work. He does have a couple good books on the police state. Battlefield America is probably his most well-known one, how the police state grew after 9/11. And it's good for him to speak on today's topic, and that's how the tyranny has grown around the COVID hysteria. And he has a great article, COVID A to Z, which I'm really hoping that he'll get into today, because that's a fun way to teach, is to use the alphabet and try to figure out what terms can go with each letter to give you a real comprehensive look at how bad things are. We learned, Jeff, last time John was on, from one of our friends, Abigail Nobel, a Michigan health freedom activist, that in John's long career as a civil liberties lawyer, he successfully defended homeschooling, I think, in Michigan. And he's got a lot of other background that he could tell us as he goes through his discussion today. He runs a think tank institution in Virginia, the Rutherford Institute. And so without further delay, Jeff, let's hear COVID A to Z tyranny.
Okay, that's excellent setup there, Charles. I'm going to switch my screen away, and John, I am giving you the floor here. You'll need to unmute, and off you go.
Okay, I've been practicing law for over 40 years, constitutional law, in the area of civil liberties. I've defended a number of cases before the Supreme Court. At our organization, we file probably 30 or amicus briefs a year. So we file a lot of briefs. We work with major law firms and all this kind of issues out there. Well, I would say free speech issues, Fourth Amendment issues, and all the things that are happening. Today, I'd like to talk a bit about generally what I'm seeing today and what's happened to our country over the past 40 years and how it's evolved to where we're at. There's an article on our website at Rutherford.org. You can read the whole article. It's called T is for Tyranny, How Freedom Dies from A to Z. I can't go through all of it because that would take probably an hour and a half to do, but I can go through some of it, some of the key points, and give you some ideas what I'm seeing out there. But I basically hang a lot what I do on some of the key people in our history, such as James Madison. And I believe this, I always say, if people say, I want to be a patriot, well, I said, well, here's a basic principle of a patriot. He said, we ought to mistrust all those in power. And I do not trust government agents. Like I said, I've sued in and out of Washington, D.C. for many years and won a number of cases against the government there. And I would say Washington, D.C. is one of the most corrupt institutions I've ever been involved with, the government there. And you really have trouble believing, basically, I'm serious, if you've worked in that institution, to see that what's there is basically run by money. And we can talk a bit about that in just a second. But the deep state, basically what's called the deep state, runs the show in Washington, D.C., and they're not concerned about freedom. They're concerned basically about money and control. And with the development of what we're seeing in the world today with artificial intelligence and all the things, canceling of people's right to speak on the internet and stuff like that, we're moving into a whole different world, something that even George Orwell would probably be going, whoa. This is everything I was thinking about has come true. In fact, I have a new novel I just published called the Eric Blair Diaries. It's about Orwell coming back to life and being freaked and trying to give people an idea of what the future is like. But the book, by the way, is written based on facts of today, what I'm seeing. And I think we're already there. And the problem that we're seeing is that our Constitution, and that's the key to everything, and the Bill of Rights and stuff that is key to any kind of a free people. Do you have rights? The Declaration of Independence, which is not taught in a lot of public schools today, basically says that we have rights that are inalienable, which means they're non-transferable. Once you have them, you have them. And the Bill of Rights, we got the Bill of Rights because there were some people with enough sense to see that the original Constitution as written could have created a dictatorial government, and they wanted a Bill of Rights saying, we do believe you have rights, and here they are. 1 through 10, the individual Bill of Rights are dynamic, giving us free speech, the right to own a weapon, to protect ourselves, the right to keep the police out of our homes, fighting against unreasonable searches of our homes and things like that. Today, as I see the government that's operating, and it has been operating quite a while, especially since 9/11, it's moved fast, very fast forward, does not respect the Bill of Rights at all. They don't really give a damn about the Bill of Rights. And kids today and people coming out of the major institutions, I talk to lawyers today, they can't tell me what's in the First Amendment anymore. Law students are telling me that their professors are saying to them at the beginning of the year in their constitutional law classes, they'll not be studying the First Amendment. And I'm going, how can you study the Constitution if you don't study the First Amendment? And I don't think that the government that we have today, and not that I think, I know, they don't want an active citizenry, not one that's wise, smart, can peacefully assemble and present their grievances to the government, which is their right under the First Amendment. They do not really want that. They want you staying home in lockdown, watching your screen devices and being controlled by Facebook, Google, and all the major corporations, who, by the way, and this is all footnotable, if you go to my commentaries, you'll see Facebook, Google, all of them work with the federal government and help control what we see, what we do, what we think, and they all have this information on us. And it's a scary future. It's not a very good future that we see coming. And I'm trying to get parents especially, and I promote homeschooling, get your kids in your home, teach them the First Amendment, teach them the Fourth Amendment, teach them the right to protest, and tell them how to do it peacefully. And because the government does want us to use violence. Once you use violence in your protest, the first thing they want to do is smash your head and say, we got to bring in the militarized police, or these people are going to go nuts, and we're going to control them. And so we're in a really strange position today. So, if we go through the alphabet that I have in my commentary, and again, you should read the commentary yourself, so I can't go through all of it in 25 minutes, is A is for the American police state, and I say it very clearly, and I've just told you that that's where we're at. We're in a state right now where the government thinks they can do whatever they want to do and enter our homes when they want to do that. The Supreme Court has allowed them to do that through their court decisions. In one case, Kentucky versus King, which I outline here as one of my points in this commentary, is that when police arrived at a door, wrong time, and not even the suspect that they were looking for, a SWAT team, they thought they smelled marijuana. They smashed through the door and bang, bang, and tortured a family, basically. The Supreme Court ruled that was okay because they showed up for so-called lawful purposes. And I'm going, really, do you trust? What kind of court would rule that in America if you knew the Bill of Rights? So that's another thing that you have to be as a lawyer in the courts. Most of the courts I've dealt with are so pro-government. It's difficult dealing with them and trying to get your rights. B is, like I said, for the Bill of Rights. I mean, what's going on in the country today with these surge response teams supposedly going to people's doors, and they have been doing it in some communities. And I also wrote a commentary on that, the right to be let alone, telling people you don't have to be allowing these people to come in your house or anything to see if you're vaccinated or whatever program they happen to be pushing, because they're there to collect information. And anything you say to them can be held against you. So again, if average Americans knew their rights, they wouldn't be putting up with any of this stuff, but they don't know their rights. C is for civil asset forfeiture, if you're familiar with that. That's where if police have been pulling people over across the country, if they have cash in their car, they're seizing it. They've seized cars, they've seized homes. One fellow was driving with money that he had gotten from a sale of a house to his mother, and they actually took that and they lost their home. And the problem with these cases is that the police split that money with the United States Department of Justice, and they're making a lot of money off the American people. As people can't afford a lawyer in most cases, they can't get into court, so they lose everything. D is for drones. I warned about the drone situation years ago, and drones now from 2 miles up are able to pick your face up and track you. Working with Google, and many police now have drones across the country. So it moves us further into this so-called surveillance state that we're in. Right now, I say E is for the emergency state. It's the most dangerous. I'll be honest with you. What I'm seeing now is the most dangerous thing I've seen develop in this country. And especially the way it's redeveloping the way people think, the way the American people think. And it's changing society more. It's almost like when I walk out on the streets some days or into places, it's almost like I'm in a foreign country. I've never been here. I grew up in the 60s and stuff and saw a lot of people trying to change things, all this, that. They weren't the brightest in the world, but they did some good things, they did some bad things. But what I'm seeing now is people basically giving up, saluting, and basically you've heard the phrase, "In God we trust." We moved into a realm of "in government we trust." And I'm warning people, please ask questions, question everything you're being told by authority, and do not just fall into line and salute and go high on Hitler, which leads to F in our alphabet. F is for fascism. Most people do not realize this. There was a detailed study done by Princeton University with Northwestern University that came out, I believe in 2015, and it was a study of 20 years of laws and policies passed in Washington, D.C. The professors came to the conclusion, and it was a well-done study, it's on our website at Rutherford.org, and I've written about it, is that basically the country is run by 585 billionaires. You can coordinate with that so-called deep state idea. And we live in an oligarchy elite where everything is about money and control. That's where we moved into in recent years, especially since 9/11, which changed everything on this planet in terms of our country. But the point is that when you're ruled by people like this, so-called oligarchic elite, the question you have to ask is, who are these people? Are they well informed? Are they there for freedom? They want to establish the Bill of Rights. Well, you don't see that happening, no. And this goes in conjunction with another study that came out of SMU in 2018 by a professor there who was trying to detail and find out where pathology or psychopaths actually congregate? Did they congregate in certain places? He found that they did in large cities, but mainly they congregated in Washington, D.C. Psychopaths are people who may have charismatic personalities, but they have one thing in mind: promoting themselves, getting money, and having control. And that's basically what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. And we're moving into a government that is, to me, does look very fascistic. And it's something what Benito Mussolini called corporatism. And they like the ideas of corporations, the fascists, in the 40s, you can do your history research, working with corporations because they gave them money, they did well, they promoted products and stuff like that. There was a conference before Hitler came into power with the biggest corporations, and some from the United States, by the way, held a major press conference. When they walked out, the German journalists asked, "What was your decision?" They announced, this is the actual words that were used: "We hired Hitler." That's the actual words that were used. And from there, we had the emergence of Adolf Hitler and all the things we've seen come out of Nazi Germany, which we know are not good. And if you know what Project Paperclip, I hope you are aware of that, where the United States brought some of the biggest Nazis into this country, who went into our universities and other institutions of the American government. And I do think that had an influence on our future and what we're seeing. The letter G I have here is G for grenade launchers and the global police. What we've seen is over the last, I would say 20 years especially, is the amount of military equipment that has gone to local police. Supposedly, when I initially studied this, it was old used material from overseas and stuff. MRAPs, which are like tanks on tires, grenade launchers, sniper rifles, all these things that they have now. And come to find out, about 40 to 50% of that was new equipment. So someone was making a lot of money off of getting this to local police, bought by the federal government, who work, a lot of local police chiefs that I talked to, they work with the FBI on a very intimate level. And if you're very well aware of what the FBI has done over the years, you should be stepping back and wondering, why is this? Do you really have local police in your community? And in many communities, I don't really think you do. No, the FBI works very intimately with a lot of local police units. And the FBI, has a really, really bad history of, if you go back to the McCarthy era and look that up, if you're not familiar with that, and some people I talk to have never heard of it. I'm going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Read about that when they invaded homes and stuff, or so-called lefters. And they collected 17,000 pages of information on Martin Luther King, Ernest Hemingway. They tracked him where he went, John Lennon. Frank Sinatra, the singer, wrote an article supporting something one group was doing at some point in time. They thought it was lefty, so they put him on their list and they started tracking him and studying him. Pete Seeger, who was a folk singer and actually a friend of mine. And believe it or not, the FBI has 80 million names on file of people they watch. And I guarantee you that many people in this program, Charles Froman and others, you got a file. I got a file. We got a file. We're being watched. So what does that say? We're a nation of suspects. H is for hollow point bullets. And I can end here pretty soon, just to give you some ideas if you've got some questions. H is for hollow point bullets. Most people do not realize this, but several years ago, the Department of Homeland Security contracted with the ATK corporations to produce 1.6 million hollow point bullets, which were passed out to all federal agencies, and the rumor was to some local police areas. Hollow point bullets, when I was in the military, we could not use them. We weren't allowed to use them. Supposedly they violated international law. Again, I was an infantry officer, so I trained people to shoot. And I know what hollow point bullets do. On contact, they expand. A hollow point bullet went through JFK's head and Martin Luther King and some other people. And you saw what happens. It blows everything away when it enters. And you have now IRS, Social Security Administration, they have SWAT teams, they have hollow point bullets. You have 175 federal agents now running around America equipped with hollow point bullets. The question is why? Again, I should put it under the letter P, but we have a very paranoid government. in many ways. When I'm talking to people, they're very paranoid about anybody that disagrees with them. I talk to former CIA agents who have read my books and come to me, and they look at me with a squint like, why do you think the way you do? And they watch everything you do. I've been told by NSA agents they read my material daily, read our material on our website just to keep up with it and watch. And I'm going, And that takes me to the letter I, the Internet of Things. Everything is today, everything you're dealing with, your cars, new cars, whatever, everything is keeping a record in your house, the Alexa speakers, you name it, your computers. The FBI admits, and they've admitted this, they can turn your phone on from a distance if it's off and turn into a speaker, and they can turn your laptop on, it becomes a visual Zoom or whatever you want to call it. They can watch what you're doing. These people are in a total pre-crime mode, and they're collecting they have the CODIS system of the FBI. They have 50 million DNA samples already, and they're moving fast to get our DNA in every way possible so they can track us wherever we go. Or as some German scientists have come forward and say, they can fabricate DNA, by the way, and put it at a crime scene. And with the rise here on the internet of singularity, if you haven't heard of that, Google's singularity program, they're predicting by 2029 that artificial intelligence will fuse with the human mind, and that this humanity that we have now, and you have Elon Musk pushing his Neuralink, which will be inserted in the head, and the way children are being indoctrinated today in terms of how they view screen devices as like gospel, whatever people want to say about it. We're becoming, in my opinion, I think that in the future, most Americans are going to be zombies, essentially, if it moves in the direction it's moving in. A few other items I want to mention before I back up here. Letter M is for Main Core. Most people don't realize this, but this is a fact. The government has a database, the federal government. The last time I checked, it was 8 million names, but I think it's more than that, of people that are extremists. They say that they will round up, working with FEMA, the police, and the militarized police today. I mean, they're doing this 80,000 SWAT team raids annually where they're crashing through doors, killing up to 500 dogs a day in this country. And the mainstream media doesn't cover that, but they cover everything else from vaccines to people who have runny noses, but they don't cover that. And so we're dealing with a government that has a database that's watching people they're going to round up. And most people don't realize this, but under the George Bush administration, right after 9/11, several years after, I think it was 2005, he gave $385 million to the Halliburton Corporation to build FEMA camps where people would be deposited around the country. And trying to get, contacting FEMA, contacting the administration at that time, trying to get them to tell us where they were building them, if they built them, they wouldn't tell. But a couple former NSA agents that I talked to briefly basically winked at me and say their own military bases. So those camps probably exist. They got the money. I'm sure they did. They got the money if they built them. I think they built them. So we're dealing in a very, very, like I say, crazy kind of country we're dealing with now. And one of the wings is R, the letter R for roadside strip searches and blood draws. I mean, the Supreme Court now has actually said if someone's unconscious, it's legal for the cops to go ahead and do a blood draw on them without asking them. And they've already held forced blood draws on people. If you drive a car on the road, they're saying now you automatically consent to that. And so what I'm saying, we talk about bodily integrity, and we're talking about V for viruses and the immunity passports and that. Bodily integrity is a very important thing. The question is, do we as human beings have an interest in our bodies, a property interest that we would be able to protect? And that's a big question. Do we have a property interest in our own homes? The way the government operates today with SWAT team raids, 80,000 annually, crashing through people's doors, kids getting killed, things like that. I mean, it's crazy. There's no respect for our private property anymore. Surge response teams going out and knocking on people's doors and trying to collect information and force information out of them. They don't respect your property rights anymore, whether it's the body or your private property, the so-called homes you own. And S is for the surveillance state. I just want to say that we do live in a total surveillance state now. There's nothing basically you can do. If you just think it now, I mean, that's about the only place I think there's really any privacy whatsoever. You can think, but if what Google and Eric Schmidt have been pushing, Ray Kurzweil out of Google have been pushing, the singularity doctrine, pretty soon, everything you think is going to be in some kind of AI computer system. So the human race, as we know it, in many ways, is going to disappear. That's a total possibility. This is not a conspiracy theory. This is something they're moving toward, and with enthusiasm. And a lot of these people want it very, very badly. And you have to ask, why do they want it? Think about it for a second. How do you control people, get them to do whatever you want to do, make them work, whatever, or be contained in their homes and work from there, or whatever you want them to do? How do you do that? You turn them into robots. And to me, that's the direction I think that where we're headed. I do think we're headed in that direction. I see it the way kids stare at cell phones. And people often ask me, gee, why aren't we changing things more today? You can't change anything if you're sitting on your butt staring at a screen device. The average American watches 150 hours of television a month. And with the way mainstream media operates, I mean, follow Carl Bernstein, who with Woodward exposed Nixon's stuff that he was doing. And good journalist, by the way, not perfect journalist, but good journalist. He wrote an article in 1977, detailed argument. He was shocked when he moved on from the Nixon stuff into mainstream media, trying to work with them, how much the NSA, FBI, and groups like that were working with the mainstream media. And today, when you're watching CNN stuff, watch who the advisors are. A lot of them are former CIA directors, agents, and stuff like that. The question is, are they independent journalists? Are these people really independent journalists? I've talked to a number of them, people I've known that work in the CIA, and they respect. They've told me they respect what I do, but they look at me like, you're kind of crazy, you know, and what you do, you're not just falling in line and saluting and doing the Heil Hitler thing. Why aren't you doing that? Why would you want to irritate and put these ideas out there? Well, critical thinking is really important, folks. Maybe I should end it on this. We're taking critical thinking away from the populace. We're taking it away from our children. Critical thinking is so important. Being able to look someone in the face and say, I disagree with you. In fact, I'm getting plenty of my friends and we're going down with signs and marching against you, Mr. Politician, because we don't agree with you, and do it peacefully. And we're going to change things. We're going to get more people. And they look at you like, why would you want to do that? Because critical thinking makes your brain stay alive. You may not be perfect. You may not always be right. And the problem with it, I see with the cancel culture we're dealing with now, where kids are afraid to say the wrong words now, they back off, they jump away like, whoa. And we're teaching them to live in a dystopian science fiction future where you'll have to look over your shoulder all the time. Either a robot will be watching you, and like I say, the robots are out there. Police across the country are working with robot dogs now and things like that. They're coming. They have already developed them. The Rex walking uptight, so-called human-like robots are already developed. They're coming. Elon Musk, the SpaceX guy, he said it. I've been screaming it to people, but they won't realize it till they see the robots walking at them down the street. That's coming. So anyway, I would say this, just from my writing, research, speaking, dealing with government officials over the years, I would say that we're at a real crisis point in this country. And what we really need is people to exercise their rights. We need to exercise the 10th Amendment, especially in local communities, to nullify acts of the federal government. Get the local communities to start standing on their own. A lot of local communities, by the way, are run by corporate entities who make a lot of money off of local populace and selling products and stuff. Get the money interest out, get the good so-called average people in government, and let's start getting this country back to a freedom mode, not a control mode, where we're willing, because someone on television says this is true, believe it. Start teaching the kids to question everybody, the authority. I mean, it's good. If you're a parent, let your kid argue with you. I mean, teach them to challenge authority, but on a peaceful way. You know what I'm saying? And get our country back to where people think again, because we're not thinking. And as long as you don't think, I mean, the mind's gone. As I say, the eyes are useless if the mind is blind and we can't see anything and we just become followers. And this country was based on that idea of we the people. And that's what I always tell people. The Constitution starts with those three nice words, we the people do ordain. So who's the government? We're the government. Those people at DC, at the local city council, there are representatives. They're supposed to be representing us, not billionaires, not psychopaths, but good people who want to see freedom for everyone out here in this country and equal rights. Any questions?
John, that was very good. Needless to say, tease us to read the rest of the alphabet there with you. It's interesting. Everybody said, one day we're going to have this zombie apocalypse. And I guess you're saying we are, but it's a different kind of zombie. And it's actually a scarier one because I figure I could kill the other kind off eventually. The thing, like you say, that's always been such a truism. And sadly, it seems like we have to wait till things get so bad. We finally decide we have to do something. And then hopefully it's not too little, too late. But, the powers that be, and it's international, they've got some pretty big guns with the media and money to thwart everybody trying to do stuff at the grassroots level.
Yeah.
I think the one little thing that's helped a little, and then you can sort of expound on what you think we can do to react even better, is, with this COVID lockdown, everybody suddenly saw what the schools were teaching, and there's this fighting that now taking place in these, local school councils, which is a good indicator of what you're saying, that we got to kind of get back control. But how do we get control in a bigger way when they have deep pockets and all that media where a lot of people, like you said, they're glued to the screen? They're not going to suddenly break away and hear that alternative message. You're going to constantly hear that propaganda they're being fed.
I think it's going to be very difficult because what's happened is we've gone so far down the road before we took any action. And like I said, when I was growing as a younger man, I had some people out there that I saw standing up and saying, we're not going to take this. And they established national movements. And I see none of that today from very few people even saying anything at all. The schools, public schools especially, the kids I talk to coming out of public schools have no clue what's going on in the world, essentially. Like I say, they're not being taught the Constitution, their rights. They don't know what to think. I talk to teenagers, people 18, 19 years old, and have never heard of George Orwell. And I'm going, you're kidding me. What is an educational system that you don't even know about some of the best-selling books of all time that tried to make people think? And so I'm telling people too, home education is a great way to go. Private schools that teach the things that we're talking about here, you're not going to get it in the schools that we have. I mean, they're just not doing it today. And it takes a spark. It takes a small spark. I've seen some people, some local city councils, I've seen them change things. I'm impressed with some of the local police around the country that have started saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. Excuse me. I had a local police officer, a police chief several years ago. He called me. He said, I read your stuff. I didn't used to agree with it. He said, but I'm stopping the SWAT teams in my area. And I said, why? He said, because we had a SWAT team raid the other day, and one of my SWAT team members actually put an AK-47 to a 4-year-old kid's head. And he said it blew everybody's mind in the team, and it freaked him out. And I said, that's the problem with it. And I've had people working in the police academies who've told me that the police are being trained so militarily now that it's like a combat situation in foreign countries. And I think you can change that. There's some good people who are doing that. When you see those people, work with them And it's just like we have a Bill of Rights pamphlet that I have. I passed it out to police departments, and some police chiefs have actually given their Bill of Rights. It's a Bill of Rights card you fold up and put in your billfold to their local police and make them read the Fourth Amendment, which said they shouldn't be crashing through doors in the middle of the night. And so there are small things you can start doing, but it's a large barge out in the water that we're going to have to push away, and it's going to be very, very difficult. But it has to start with somebody.
Yeah, and just keep going like we're doing here.
Keep going.
That's the idea.
Like people say to me, why are you still working? And I say, because I see a problem and I want to help the problem. And as long as I see the problem, I'm going to try to help the problem. And I tell people we're here on this planet to do one thing, help one another as human beings. And we forget that because the way we're taught today is, again, we're data bits and kids staring at cell phones. I mean, if you say the wrong word, they think you should be eliminated, basically. And we've got to get back to that area of especially teaching young people. And that's where you're going to have to begin. Teaching young people that what's happening today in this country is not what they think, and try to change their heads so they'll start thinking critically again and not push the idea that Facebook or whatever, or Google or YouTube can just cancel somebody because they say a word they don't like, because we're entering a phase where free speech is going to be dead.
Yeah, could be hazardous. Yep, nope, I hear you. Charles, I see your hands up.
It is. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, bad connection here. Talk about some optimistic thinkings. For example, half the country is refusing to participate in the experiment purportedly to stem the COVID so-called pandemic. And there are other movements, people kind of frustrated over the election and what's going on now with this weird presidency. Do you see any optimism from some of those dynamics, or is it so far gone that it's just going to be hard to put up resistance?
I see optimism wherever one person stands up and says, I won't do it, or this or that. And I don't always agree with some of these people, but I've like I say, 50% of the people I've defended over my years, I have trouble eating dinner with them because I get an upset stomach. But I defend their rights to do what they do because, like I say, critical thinking is the most important thing we can do for society today and keep it alive. The idea that people need to hear another viewpoint and not be canceled because they do. But I'm not a pessimist. I'm a realist. And I see what's happening in front of me and I say, how do I change that? And when I see older folks that I know just sitting and watching TV all day, I'm going, this is not working. Because I don't watch any television, the news or any of that stuff. And I'm wondering, and they believe everything that's being said to them. And the problem is, a lot of that is propaganda. It just is. We know that now. Bernstein and other reporters have come out and said it very clearly. Glenn Greenwald and other good writers out there have written on this. And that's what we're seeing. But I think with children today, there is some hope if we can, again, move in the right direction with them. But if you think your public school could change somewhat, that would be great. Get down, if you're a public school advocate, get down there, maybe run for the school board. Get some of those things out of your school that are telling kids that they can't do this, they can't do that, because the words, if whatever word's dangerous to them 10 years ago, again, whatever word they want to make up that's dangerous. It could be Charles Frohman, John Whitehead. Those are words that have to be canceled. Let's erase these people from society. And again, with the way AI is going, and it's moving very quickly, by the way, AI is basically everywhere that I see it, on the computer systems, phones, wherever, in stores, wherever you go, you're being watched by AI, basically, and recorded. It's, again, we're up against a monster, but there are monster fighters out there. There are people who fought the vampires in the old movies and stuff. And you can do it, but you have to stick to it and keep talking, folks. You got kids, you got grandchildren, talk to them about these issues and see if you can get them to wake up. But the problem is, and Orwell said it best. I mean, his real name was Eric Blair, but he said, George Orwell, he who controls the past controls the future, and he who controls the future controls the present. And you see a lot of history being destroyed around this country is because they want to rewrite things and live in a fictional world. And that's what's facing the generation we're seeing coming up now.
Visions of Wikipedia. Dr. Campbell, I see
Real
your hand
quick,
up.
Jeff, in the chat, I put a Zoom for my Friday discussion further on health reform against health tyranny in the chat. Thanks,
with
Jeff.
National Health Federation. That'll be good. So everybody that can make that one, definitely attend. Dr. Campbell, I see your hand was up.
Yes, thanks again for bringing in such brilliant speakers. One of the things, John Q. Public would listen to you and probably tune out 99% of it. But the thing you said at the beginning and at the end is something that I find is a starting point for anybody. And that is question what the authorities are telling you. And with my own kids who kind of, with COVID happened, and I'm a physician, so I have some expertise with COVID. I would ask them, I would say, just tell me what the government and what the media outlets are telling you. I'd say, change every channel. And they would find that all the media outlets that day would be saying the same thing. And then I would pull up the data and I would say, okay, here's the graph describing what they're calling as this latest outbreak. And of course, the data and what they were saying had nothing to do with each other. So I think my point is, I think if we can focus on that point that you made of don't challenge, but question what the authorities are telling you and use your critical thinking skills. If you can prove the authorities wrong often enough, day to day, soon people will come around to your way of thinking. And then when you give your talk, they will believe it.
Agreed.
I guess that's my observation. Thank you.
Good observation. Yeah, I agree. The key is, and I said that, is people want to be a patriot. That's great. I said to be a patriot, though, you have to question all those in authority. And that's what Madison said. And that's the basis of the Bill of Rights. It's saying, get out of our lives, stay out of our lives, and do not be trying to control us. And that's basically, I agree with you. That's a basic principle. If you get children critical thinking, make them think and say, don't be afraid because someone's asking you a question or saying, I disagree with you. Pull them in and discuss it because you know something, you might be wrong. Are you right all the time, young person? And they'll know that. And just say, listen to others and make up your mind and see that, okay? And let it be like that. And that's the way you can build a future of people who will think for themselves, hopefully.
Well, sometimes you feel like you're fracturing their world by telling them that there's evil out there and you have, but I think in the long run, it's the best thing. Hey, one more comment, Jeff, if it's okay.
Certainly.
Your billionaire comment, I think, couldn't be more true. Over the years, I've had the success of getting one bill introduced, passed, and signed into law, 2 or 3 bills written that never went anywhere, and about 5 executive orders that were written and signed into law. And of course, numerous things, similar things that never went anywhere. And the one thing I will tell you that I've found out as I've looked back, every success that I've had, the one common element was I had a billionaire backer. None of the successes would happen without a billionaire backer, and every unsuccessful effort did not have a billionaire backer. So go figure. Of course, my billionaires are good, right? At least, but the point is in Washington, it is, I think, a battle of the billionaires today. Thank you.
Yes, again, that study that came out of Princeton Norfolk University is really well done. Yeah, and they say we're ruled by an oligarchic elite. And like I say, I've worked on a lot of cases in out of DC and met with senators and stuff. They tell me the same thing. They look me in the eye and go, one of them, he said, you want to go out for lunch, John? And I went, I think so. So he walked down the street and he said, if someone says hello to you in Washington, D.C., there's one reason for it. And I said, excuse me? He went, for money. And I went, oh, I get it. Okay. So yes, that's what we're dealing with. And like I say, if you add the psychopathic character to it, we're in a scary situation.
Part of what to comment before we have another question here on your earlier comment about having these kids question everything. The key also is the idea of having cogent discussions and having like intelligent arguments to speak from, as opposed to where you can see where they've deliberately led everybody is just defaming each other and calling each other names and just working off emotion with like first level questions. No one's even at a second level question, let alone third or fourth level questioning. It's become amazing how superficial the whole population functions. So that's a scary reality too, that's to fight against. Michelle, I see your hand is up.
Oh, hey there.
There you are.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, thank you very much. This has been a wonderful program. My first time in. So my sister and I were talking not long ago about how our country has such a strong history of protesting. And we have now something of this magnitude that's happening, and we're being divided in this country. And I'm trying to figure out what's driving this. And I think, is it fear? Is it the lack of, not having platforms we can all come together? I mean, there's healthcare workers in Wisconsin protesting. There's some people in LA, pockets of people. But what, what's your opinion on the reason that this isn't happening at a magnitude that we in this country have been able to create?
Well, one thing with the COVID situation, with the educational system, the media, the government working together, they've created sort of a huge entity that's difficult to operate off of. But to give you an example, Hermann Goering, who was one of Hitler's chief motivators and generals, was asked the direct question at the Nuremberg trials when he was on trial, tell us, how was Nazism so successful? What was it about Nazism that was so appealing to people? And Goering looked him in the eye and said, it wasn't Nazism, it was fear. If you can get people fearful, you can control them in any way. And like I've said, fear builds its own prison walls in your mind. And people are scared to death today. They're very, very fearful of everything. I mean, they'll run down the street sometimes or get really angry if someone's not wearing a mask or makes a mistake doing it. And fear is basically what I'm seeing controlling everything today. And the government knows that well. I mean, Obama admitted that he used behaviorists. They hired them to nudge the population. He said that publicly. So they hired behaviorists, out of the advertising industry who know how to get people excited or divided, derided. And the old saying of divide and conquer is what we're seeing today. And like I say, it's a different country. I feel like I live in a foreign country today when I'm moving in and out, talking to people. They don't want to debate any of these issues. It's either you do it or you don't. If you don't do it, you're a conspiracy theorist or you're an extremist. And by the way, we're all extremists today if you disagree with the government and you're on that main core list that I talked about earlier. But I think fear is one way the government knows how to do it. And the COVID thing has been an excellent way to use something, make it very fearful and control people. And someone's making a lot of money. I don't know if you saw the top 10 billionaires in this country increased their wealth over $300 million in the last year. Someone's making a lot of money off of all this stuff.
Yep. No, I'm with you. Thank you for that. There was a book by Mercola and it was a foreword by Robert Kennedy Jr. And that was in the foreword, that quote. So I read that several months ago and I just thought, is this really true? It's hard to swallow. So I appreciate your opinion on that. It's true, but I don't want to believe it. That's that's where I'm at. But
it's definitely true. It's here. We're seeing, like I say, the future is here. Yep. The future, the past comes forward, and like I said, the problem with American people generally over the years is they want to line up and believe everything the government tells them to do. And the government's done some really sneaky bad things, especially if you follow what the FBI did. That Project Paperclip, bringing in all those Nazi scientists and people, and they went into government institutions. If you just think about that for a second, these were people who just didn't care whether they were doing experiments on people, locking them up in camps, starving them to death. And these are the people that were brought into our country to help I mean, the FBI, by the way, I mean, I quote it in my book, for example, Battlefield America. They loved the way the Gestapo was working. They thought it was, I mean, they were like enthusiastic about it. They sent some of their key men over to work with them. And those are all facts, by the way, folks. So we've been fooled, a lot of us, and it's time to stop being fooled, rip the mask off of the beast, and start facing the beast down.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sadly, what it also means is that people actually have to do something.
Yeah.
That's the real challenge in America. Typically, is that, well, can I slip you a couple bucks? It's no, I really need you to stand on the corner and get some signatures. And it's like, oh, I got a TV show to watch. So that's the real challenge.
Yeah.
You know, beyond the critical thinking, is just getting anyone to have any motivation to do anything. And it's pretty rough. It's been advantageous from people that are entrepreneurial because the competition against you is pretty limited. So that if everybody tried hard, it would be a challenging world because everybody be out there trying to make it happen. But most are so lazy or apathetic, it's just convenient for everybody else. And in this instance, like you said, now they get the controls of everyone's eyeballs and ears. Apathy, oh my gosh, it was ready-made for me. I've been looking for the Procrastinator Society. I've just been too lazy to find it. So it's been interesting to see where we are. Well, I'll tell you, that was great. We got time here to maybe slip in one last question here. And otherwise, I'm going to let Charles give us a little closeout. Or maybe, Charles, are you still able to connect? Yeah, there you are.
Yeah.
Why don't you slip a last question and give us a little closing statement?
Well, I mean, we all have friends who are advocates or, as you said, entrepreneurs trying to disrupt the markets. You and I are featured in forums for creating the cash patients that Robert Campbell is involved in doing, and Jim Gray back there on the call. Tyler Nixon's on the call. He's a counsel for Roger Stone. Marilyn Singleton is a eminent former president of the AAPS, the Free Market Doctors Group. So there are a lot of groups who have been advocates for freedom in various ways for a long time, and creating better ventures in the markets. My Friday Zoom, for example, is to what extent is integrated care inserting itself in health plans, and are these patients, as they become better educated, are they going to translate into better activists to help us politically? That's the question: is can these great free market ventures translate into free market activism? Because that's what I think we need. John, we're thinking about that, the role of the Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged entrepreneurs who care about freedom, helping with the activism part.
What was the question?
Of any entrepreneurs that you've crossed paths in your life who have a free market bent, what role can they play with their money, with their influence in the market, to translate into the activism part?
Well, you support your groups out there like us who again, we're a nonprofit group. We survive off of that. If again, working with groups like us and others out there, and if you've got funds you can push toward educational efforts, which are really needed badly in this country, getting some material out there, some alternative channels like this that work really well, and getting alternative information like that, and financing products that basically question the government. But I would, as a lawyer, I'd just say get good advice, have a council committee that works with you, and so that you can focus on some of the more important projects out there, which are getting kids educated, getting support for schools that will actually teach the Constitution and Bill of Rights, and a lot of things like that we've been talking about.
Very good. Well, that's excellent. So on that note, unfortunately, we're running out of time here, but again, I'll remind everybody, we want to come back to continuing the conversation. You'll have a chance to connect here with John and help carry forward some of these great ideas, and you'll find some other great people to try to help move them along similarly as you roll through here. So on that note, though, John, I want to thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you very much, sir.